Hello students, welcome back to the second part of the video, the selfish giant. Okay, so in the previous video I have taught you about the first part of the chapter. Okay, and here in this video I am going to cover up the remaining part of the chapter. So student, I hope you all remembered what I have taught in the previous video. Okay, let us once again recap it. It was a selfish giant who owned a garden, a very beautiful garden. There were many children who loved the garden of the giant, but the giant refused the children to use the garden. Fine? It so happened that he had been to his friend's residence, to his friend's place by the name Cornish Org. Okay, his friend was Cornish Org. So the selfish giant, he had been to his friend's place for 7 years, and when he returned back, he saw many children playing in his garden. He was really frustrated at the sight of the children playing in the garden, and he shouted at them, and they all ran away. They were all scared and they ran away. Then later on, he put up a notice board on the outside of the wall, and there it was written, "Trespassers will be persecuted." So poor children had nowhere to play now. They played in the road, which was very dusty and full of stones. So it was very difficult for them to play, and they missed the garden very badly. So after that we learned that then came the spring season. Fine? In all over the country enjoyed spring season, whereas in the giant's garden it was still winter. The only residents who were at the giant's garden were the frost and the snow. Then they invited the north wind, okay, who came about wrapped in fur and rolled all day about in the garden. Then later on they invited hail, who came dressed in grey. Fine. So here now in giant's garden it was only the cold and thunder. So the giant wondered when the spring would come in his garden, while frost, snow, north wind and the hail stayed happily. They don't want to go away from the garden. Fine. So after the spring comes the autumn. When the autumn season came, even autumn refused to come into the garden of the giant because the giant was very selfish. How was he selfish? He was selfish because he didn't allow any children to play in the garden, because he thought that this garden is mine, so it is for my personal use. No one is authorized to use this garden without my permission. So I do not give any permission to the children to play, so nobody would come and play here. Fine? But all these things were hated by the seasons. The seasons, spring, summer, autumn, they hated this thing, the selfishness of the giant. So they refused to enter into the garden of the giant. Clear? So we have learned till here in the previous video. So now let us see what happens in the next video. Okay, in the next part, let us see what happens. Now, one morning, as the giant laid awake in his bed, he heard some mesmerizing music. Okay, he heard some very enchanting music. He thought that the king's musicians were passing by, but in actually it was the linnet song that sounded so sweet. Okay, so one morning what happened? The giant, he laid awake in his bed. That means he was on his bed, but he was not asleep. He was awake. Then suddenly he heard some mesmerizing music. Mesmerizing means the song which is very pleasant to the ear. Fine? He heard some song, some music. What did he think? He thought that the king's musicians were passing by. He thought that maybe it was the king's musicians who were passing by the castle of the giant. But in reality, it was not king's musician, but it was the linnet. So linnet is a sweet songbird. Okay, its song is very sweet. And remember, in the previous video I have told that the children, they stopped playing and they listened to the song of the bird. It was this linnet. Fine. So even the giant, he woke up, he got out of his bed in order to see whose music was being played. Then later on he came to know that it was the song of the bird by the name linnet. Fine. Okay. As the giant woke up to see, he saw the most wonderful sight. Then he happened to see a sight most wonderful. What was that? The children had crept in through a small hole in the wall. Okay, so when the children were playing, he drove them out and then he built huge walls all around his garden. Remember? So now what happened? There was a small hole in the middle of the wall, in the center of the wall. Fine? So children, they crept into it through the small hole. Okay, they crept in through a small hole in the wall and reached the garden. Then what happened? With them in the garden, the trees were happy. When the children came, when they came into the garden of the giant, the trees became very happy. The birds had come, okay, and even the birds had come back. And in that part where the children were playing, the flowers grew out of the ground and the spring finally came. Fine? That means the children, they were playing at one side of the garden, and in that place all the happiness came all together. Example, the spring, okay, the flowers, the bird, and even the trees were happy. Fine? That means everything came all together. But what happened? In the farthest corner of the garden, there was still winter. But in one part of the garden, which was very far away from where the children were playing, it was still winter. Clear? Why was it still winter? I think you came to know by reading these 4-5 lines. It was still winter there because the children did not step into that far corner of the garden. They were playing in the nearby places which was near to the hole through which they crept in. Fine? They did not go to the other end, to the other corner of the garden. And so this is the reason why there was still the winter. Okay? Now see what happened. As he tried to look, he saw a little boy who was so short that he couldn't reach till one of the branch of the tree. Okay. Then what did the giant see? The giant was looking from his castle that there was one boy who was standing in the corner of that garden where it was still winter. Okay? And that boy was too short that he couldn't climb even to the first branch of the tree. We all know in a tree there are many branches. Okay? There is the tree. Here are many branches. Okay? Many branches. And then here this is the tree. Okay? So here is that boy. So this boy, he couldn't climb even the first branch of the tree. He was trying to climb up, but he couldn't get on top of, on the tree. Okay? Why couldn't he get? Because he was too short. Fine? Then what happened? The giant ran to help him, but instead scared all the kids away. Okay? Then the giant, he ran to help him, but all the children, they saw the giant and they were scared. They were all scared. They thought the giant had come to chase them away. Okay? They were all scared and they ran away. Only the boy in the farthest corner had stayed because he couldn't see the approaching giant because his eyes were filled with tears. Okay. So now this boy, he couldn't climb the tree. Okay, so when he couldn't climb the tree, what happened? He tried hard and hard, and even trying harder, he couldn't reach till the first branch. So he started weeping. He started crying. And he was crying, he cried so bitterly that his eyes were totally filled with tears. Okay, so in the meanwhile, what happened? In the meanwhile, the giant, he was approaching. Okay, he was approaching in order to help that small boy to reach to the branch of the tree. Okay, but the children, they were all scared and they ran away except for this small boy. He was crying so bitterly that he couldn't see the giant because his eyes were totally filled up with tears. Okay, then what happened? See, then the giant helped him climb the tree and the little boy hugged and kissed him in return. Okay, then what happened? The giant, he came and he asked to the little boy, "Why are you crying, my boy?" The boy, although he was scared, but he told that I could not reach to the branch of the tree. Then the giant, he lifted the boy up into the tree. Okay, when the boy reached into the tree, he was very happy and he hugged the giant and he kissed him on his cheek. Clear? Then, upon seeing the transformed behavior of the giant, the rest of the kids returned back and played with him. Fine? So, what happened? When the children saw that the behavior of the giant has totally changed. Okay, earlier he was very cruel. He didn't allow anyone to enter into his garden. But now, instead of driving those children away, they had themselves seen that the giant have lifted that boy and kept him on the branch of the tree. Fine? Then the children here understood that the behavior of the giant had changed. So they all came back in the garden and they started playing. Fine, everyone? Fine, everyone? Okay, now let's see next. Okay. Yes. The giant broke down the wall and opened garden for kids. Then what did the giant do? He broke all the walls which were surrounding his garden, okay, and he opened the garden for the kids to play. So what happened as a result? Every afternoon, children would come to play with him after school. The giant kept looking for that boy he once helped, but unfortunately, he never came and no one knew about him. Okay, so now what happened? The giant, he had completely transformed his behavior, okay, from rude behavior to a very good, genius and cool behavior. Right? So now what happened? Now this giant, he had a complete affection for that small boy whom he had helped that particular day. Okay, so every afternoon children would come to play in the garden. Okay, and even this much happened that the giant also started playing with the children. Clear? So the giant was really happy to play with the children, but he really missed that particular boy, that small boy. He really had some affection for him. Okay, but he never get a chance to find him back. He asked to the children about that particular boy, but nobody knows him. That who is he, where he is, or where had he come from. Nobody knows anything about him. Okay, so now what happened next? See, years passed by and the giant grew old and weak. Okay, so after many years, the giant became old and weak. He now only watched the children play. So now he is not able to play with the children because he is already old and weak. He only sat on his castle and watched children playing. One winter morning, as he looked out of his window, he saw a marvelous sight. Okay, so one morning when he was looking out of his window, he saw a very good sight. Marvelous means excellent. He saw a very excellent sight. Sight means view, nazara. What did he see? He saw that in the farthest corner of the garden, the trees was covered with white blossoms. Then what did he see? He see that in the farthest corner of the garden, okay, in the very far corner of the garden, the tree was covered with white blossoms. There were white flowers on the trees. Its branches were golden and it bore silver fruit. He was very surprised to see that the branches were golden. The branches of those trees were golden and it bore silver fruit. Bore means to give. Okay, here it means to give, and it has silver fruit on the tree. Fine. Underneath the tree, he saw the little boy that he once helped. Then underneath the tree, okay, means below the tree, he saw that same boy whom he helped that special day. Fine. So as soon as he saw that wonderful sight, he was very happy. So joyously means with great excitement, enjoyment. So joyously he went downstairs and into the garden to meet him. But as soon as he went near him, the giant grew angry. Okay. So now what happened? The giant, he ran towards the garden, towards that particular boy. Okay, he was old and weak, so it took time for him to reach there. But finally he reached. So upon reaching the giant, he saw that boy and he was really angry when he reached near him. Why was he really angry? Because the child had imprints of 2 nails on his hand and 2 on his little feet. Why was he angry? He was angry because he could see that on the palm, okay, palm means the hand, hatheli, okay, on the palms and on his little feet there were 2 imprints of nail. Imprints means nishan, okay, like this, 2 imprints, nishan, okay, and nails. Here nails, it means not your fingernails. Here nails means keel. Okay, a small, sharp instrument which we fix on the wall in order to hang some cloth or something, that is called nails, keel. Fine. So what did the giant see on that day? The giant saw the imprints of 2 nails on his hand and 2 nails on his little feet. Fine. This made the giant very angry. The giant asked the kid the name of the person who wounded him. So when the giant was really angry, he asked the boy, "Tell me the name of that person who wounded you so badly, I would go and I would slay him with my sword." मैं अभी जा कर के अपना तलवार निकाल के उसे मार डालूंगा, तो मुझे बताओ आपको ये जख्म किसने दिया. Fine. The child told him, where it is? Yes. The child told him that those were the wounds of love. Then the child, what did he reply? He replied that there's nothing to be angry about, because these wounds, ye zakhme, okay, these wounds were the wounds of love. Then the giant, he go on thinking that why has he said like that? Okay, so why has he told like that? Because that boy, that small boy, was the messenger of God. Okay, so according to the poet, okay, Oscar Wilde, according to this poet, he tried to tell that this child was the messenger of God. That means he was the follower of Jesus Christ, or possibly Jesus Christ himself, okay, who took the form of means incarnation of a small boy. Fine. So since this play is a Christian play. So here Oscar Wilde tries to tell that the small boy was no other than the messenger of God. So initially the giant was struck with awe and he knelt before the child. So as soon as he heard the words that it was the wounds of love, she understood that he is the messenger of God. Okay, then she got a deep feeling in his heart and he knelt before the child. अब वो बच्चे के सामने ही झुक गया. Fine. The child told him that once he allowed him to play in his garden. Wait. Okay. The child told him that once he allowed him to play in his garden, now it was time for the giant to come to his garden, which is paradise. Okay. So, and then when the giant, she knelt before the child. Okay, knelt. You know what is knelt? Knelt means घुटने टेक के किसी के सामने झुक जाना. Okay, that's called knelt. So when the giant knelt before the child told him that you once allowed me to play in your garden. Okay, one day it happened that I could not reach to the branch of the tree. You allowed me to play. I was so happy, I was so delighted that day. You allowed me to play in your garden, and now it is time for you to come to my garden. And now it is time for you to come with me and play in my garden. And where is my garden? It is paradise. That means in heaven. It is Jannat. ठीक है? So that means the God has told him that you have been forgiven because earlier you were very cruel, but all your mistakes had been forgiven because you did a very good deeds, and that is you started loving children all with your heart, all with your true heart. So the person who loves children and who takes care of others are the first person who is loved by God. So you are forgiven and you are loved by God, and now God has sent me to call you back to my garden. That means to the garden of the God, which is heaven. So now you have to come along with me and go to the paradise. Okay? Then in the afternoon, when the children came to play in the giant's garden, they found the giant lying lifeless on the ground with white blossoms all over him. Okay, so that same evening, okay, in the morning he saw that boy, okay, and he reached there. He understood that he was the messenger of God, and then upon asking, the boy told him that once I get to play in your garden and now you will play in my garden. Come along with me, let's go to my garden, which is paradise in heaven. Fine. So that boy, he took the giant to his garden. So in the evening, in the afternoon, when the children came to play in the giant's garden, they found, what did they see? They found the giant lying lifeless. Lifeless means without having any life. Okay, that means mara hua. They found giant lifeless on the ground with white blossoms all over him. Then they saw that his body was totally covered with all those flowers which was on the tree. That means the God has showered blessings on him. Okay, children. So here we came to the end of the chapter. So how do you like the chapter? I hope you enjoyed listening the story. Yes or no? Okay, so here the theme of the chapter is that we should always have true feelings for others. We should always love others. If we love others, we will be loved by God. We should not care whether we are loved by our fellow beings or not. Okay, that means whether this whole world loves us or not. We should only think that if we are loved by God or not, because God is our Almighty Father. We came through Him and we will go back to Him. So we must make our Father happy, not the people of the world. Fine. So here what I particularly mean to say is that we must not think that we will do good to others and we will get back something in return. We should not have these feelings. We should have the feelings of loving forgiving others all with our heart. If we have this ability, that means we have the ability to reach to God, and we will go to heaven one day for sure. Fine everyone? Okay, thank you for watching.